If you're looking for a clean, sober, professional, academic,
well-researched, historically accurate, generally accurate, serious podcast
on Southern folklore, ghosts, bizarre events, and unique people,
this podcast is not for you.
However, if you've decided you can live with that,
then join us for The Strange South.
The Strange South.
Hi, Marleah.
Hi, Patrice. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, y'all.
Woo. We are back
From the adventure of a lifetime.
Pretty adventurous.
It was fun.
Mhm.
Next week is the official Fat Tuesday and Ash Wednesday.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I sent Marleah and Courtney a photo of what the area we were staying at looked like, and it was a hot mess of people.
Mhm. I showed that picture to my older child, who looked at it and physically recoiled.
That's basically what I did.
I was just like, cool. Well, I'm in my 40s now, so I don't think I could do that. But I've been there when it looked similar on New Year's, and
I couldn't.
this body can't handle that like my 25-year-old body did.
Yeah.
This version of me.
Pushing through
No,
Well,
post-COVID fray, I can't imagine.
just the bathrooms. I was just like, how are people going to pee?
I know,
That was my first reaction.
Where are these people peeing?
You
Where
see
are
how
the
I do it? We
fucking
find one
balcony.
place that we know has it. And it doesn't matter if we're 3 blocks away. Let's walk back because I need to go to that bathroom
Right.
again. If
By
you
the
find
way,
a place, go.
Like,
You
all
make it your
props
home
to
base.
Favela Chic on Frenchman for having a bathroom and the best lamp warmed pizza
Yeah.
at any time of day.
And always a bar stool open,
Always.
Mm-hmm.
which is it served us so well.
Yeah, I liked it there.
I
Yeah.
did too.
We
Good beer
had-
prices. Get some Abita Amber. It was nice. I
And
liked it.
fucking who was it that was on the TV all the time?
Shakira.
Shakira. Yeah.
Mhm.
I forgot that.
And I couldn't even remember who that was. I was like, who's that blonde girl?
Remember that lady that says, my hips don't lie?
So I think we had for my take anyways, we had a trip that was just right up my alley. It was
Mhm.
it was my speed. It pushed me a little bit, I was like, I didn't hide in my house the whole time, which sometimes I could see myself doing. But we saw 3 parades,
Mhm.
and they were more like hometown parades.
It was fun.
Yeah. So before we talk about that, let's talk about this drink.
It's bringing us back, isn't it?
And one of the reasons that when I came back, it was after vacation depression, is because we stayed literally almost on the same block as a little brunch cafe.
Yeah.
And so we were just able to walk and get a wonderful breakfast or brunch, and then
A Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary. It's already starting in, y'all.
Yep, it's
What
good.
the fuck is this thing I'm drinking? It's a Bloody Mary.
Delicious
It's
is what it is.
delicious. Absolutely.
And so Patrice was like, yeah, I woke up Tuesday and was like, I can't just walk down the street and get a Bloody Mary.
Mm.
But I wasn't here either to just make you one because we did bring all the things to make them,
did.
and I
That's
made
true.
them.
And you
Yes.
made a delicious one.
We made some
Mhm.
good ones. Yeah, I had about 4 when we were there, maybe. And my favorite though was at the French Market. What is it? The banana daiquiri stand.
The
or whatever.
organic-
The
yes.
organic banana.
The organic banana.
That
You
was
wouldn't
really
think,
good.
but they did all kinds of fresh drinks.
Mhm.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I saw somebody
they
get a Bloody Mary. Then I was like, all right, it's got all the fruity stuff. I'm afraid. And no, my mouth's watering just thinking about it.
It was really
They
good.
had all this different seasoned salt in it. Anyway, loved it. And this is a Bloody Mary, which I know I've done this before, and it's probably been years now since I've made a Bloody for the show.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I have updated my recipe this year because at Tailgate, I made a new one. That's why I'm calling this one the Tailgate Bloody Mary. Because one of our friends is vegetarian, which Marleah is pescatarian. So I've always made it with Worcestershire sauce.
Mhm.
Doesn't bother her. But those of you who don't know, Worcestershire sauce has fish
Fish sauce.
sauce
fish.
in it. Yeah. So it's not vegetarian. So at Tailgate, I decided to check and make sure. And one of my favorite condiments is A1 sauce. I love A1 sauce. Googled
Absolutely.
it, verified, looked at the label, nothing but fruits and vegetables in it. It's completely vegetarian, so I added it to
It's
this
good.
A1 Bloody Mary.
No.
with all the rest of the stuff. Wickles, pickles, juice, olive juice.
Oh.
Didn't have any horseradish, but Patrice said she did. I wish I would have asked.
But it's still delicious.
Yep, and
Now-
all the sides.
Because it has I kind of want a steak.
Yeah.
I am not a vegetarian.
Yep. I love A1 so much. So that's a really, I like the flavor to
I
add
do
just a
too.
little. It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
even much. I don't even.
It's really good.
It kind of fills kind of a void that sometimes they could have. That I think they try to overpower with hot sauce,
Yeah.
like that first
Yes.
Bloody Mary that we
Yeah,
had.
so we went, and everything else was great at that Hudat Coffee. Hudat Coffee Cafe
Yes.
yeah.
was like, the
Hudat.
food was wonderful.
Oh my
the staff was
gosh.
They were
great. It was
really
a
nice.
very cool place.
Even
but
the
that
customers
bloody
Yeah,
was
there.
we made
hot.
friends with some locals.
Yes,
Right.
yes. But that bloody, I
It was
drank
hot.
maybe half of mine.
Yeah.
I drank the rest of everybody
Yeah,
else's.
Courtney drank everybody
on our way
else's.
to St. Louis Cemetery #1.
It was so hot.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the wonderful things, like it's been a minute since I've been to New Orleans where I just went there to go to enjoy New Orleans.
Mhm.
Usually it's been like a conference or something else is happening that I'm on somebody else's dime down there. So we had like this wonderful Airbnb, and when we got there and it was like around 7, it's like the sun was set up,
Mhm.
whatever. It was getting near dark, and there was all these people out on this big grass lot, and we were like maybe 2 blocks from the river. All of these like floats start
Mhm.
appearing, and these costumes, and
Lots
just
of blinky lights.
Lots of
of
lights. Yes.
blinky like costumes with lights on it, and then like we start hearing like the band start playing, and come to find out that exactly where we were was the starting point for one of the first Mardi Gras parades of the season, which was Crew Boheme. And so I went to their website to kind of look them up to see what they were about. I'm just going to read you this
Oh,
straight off
cool.
the website. Crew Boheme is a carnival parade, the likes of which has never been seen in the history of the city. Crew Boheme has the distinct honor of being one of the first parades of the carnival season. Each year, Crew Boheme brings visual and auditory fest and mystery and artistry and fun. And this year's theme was Night of the Living Art. So they have
Ah.
only been around since I think 2019.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to say,
I
it's
thought
only
they
a
were
few
new.
years
They were
old.
Very, very young. And one of the things that makes them unique is like, unlike most carnival crews, Crew Boheme does not have a typical king or queen. Rather, they have a supreme green fairy.
Oh,
Which
Was that the girl
reigns.
inside the round, inside the
Yes.
flowers?
Yes. And the green fairy is kind of an inside joke, meaning absence.
Absent. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Also stated on their website, according to carnival historian Errol Laborde, okay, French dude, French guy. Crew Boheme is another example of the leadership role that women are taking in carnival. In recent years, women have led most of the new organizations. Laborde added that he likes the name Boheme and that it fits with the artistic characters of both Carnival and the Marigny French Quarter neighborhood.
Which is where we stayed.
Which is
in
where
the
we
Marigny.
stayed.
Mhm.
He also noted that the idea of the green fairy as the monarch is especially clever. It's an insider joke, he noted, but one worth bringing to light. So he says that this green fairy is a nickname given to absence. The potent anise, is that how you say
Anise.
it? And anise.
Mm-hmm.
Anise flavored liqueur used in many of the city's early cocktails. He said Boheme follows the tradition of artist parades originally established in the 1970s by the crew of Clones. The group, which was based at the then new Contemporary Art Center, which we went by, established the small scale walking parade with miniature floats.
Mm.
The crew de view would carry on Clone's legacy in the tradition of the carnival. Labrador said, ideas have a way of re-evolving and each adding its own new touches. So
I
there's
just liked them.
Oh my.
They were
Well,
our
if
favorite.
you go to crewboheme.com, the list of the crews that were marching in that parade is very interesting because you have like very whimsical. You had like the Marie Antoinettes
Mhm.
and You had like the French.
They were always wearing berets and singing modern songs in French.
Yeah,
That
right?
playing them in French. Yeah,
That was a lot of fun. So you can go through and see like who was marching in that particular parade, and it was just such a joy. Like it's totally, to me, set the mood for that weekend that we spent there, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, that one was my favorite for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, and I'm realizing. Remember, they had the giant green praying mantis.
Yes, and
And
all,
they had the giant
snail and the frog.
And the lady was green. The
Mhm.
big, like floral, the fan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, she had green.
It really was. I thought the most creative and
And we were just
it really was
literally at our
whimsical.
front
It was
door,
the most
literally,
fun.
and we
Yeah.
just walked out our front door and started wandering around while
Yeah.
they were getting ready to line up for the parade. Just
And they
looking
were
at-
the only one that went up Frenchman that we
Right.
saw. So because Croix de Vue went the perpendicular
mhm.
way, and we saw that one, and or Croix d'Illusion went the perpendicular way. Croix de Vue started the same place as Delusion, and so one was very short and one was quite a bit longer, and like Croix de Vue was like the big one for the
Mhm.
weekend,
Right.
and it was super political.
Yeah.
Oh my
everybody
gosh.
that we talked to was like, "Oh, that's the raunchy one."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It
like by
was,
the
too.
time we got there, though, I was like,
It wasn't as
I
raunchy.
expected somebody putting their junk in my face. Like
Yeah.
that's what I was looking for.
The
I was
floats were giant penises with the mayor riding those penises.
like, yes,
and
there was some serious.
Jizz
Nobody
fest instead of jazz
watched
Jizz
the
fest.
fest.
mayor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's
with
a lot of
hats that had
There was
lights.
the massive uterus with like
Yeah.
the tubes that were the
Yeah.
arms and the angry face. There was
Right.
yeah,
They
it
were
was
mad
super
at
political.
the mayor.
Yes,
They
it's,
do
it's,
not
it's
like her.
like the mayor and potholes seem to be like
Yeah.
the two big themes of a lot of the
and the
parades.
changing of the routes. Everybody had something that
Oh,
was like
yes.
a dig on the last minute changes in the routes and people being repositioned to different days, and nobody was
Mhm.
happy about that stuff.
Yeah,
But
Oh, and the big box places being, I guess this mayor.
oh yeah, that one was
There-
yeah. I think that's
There
part
were
of the
a
mayor.
lot, yeah, a
Yeah.
lot about that, like
Big
not
box
wanting the
stores
big
taking
box
everything.
stores in the
But yeah, and I wanted to shout out some because Horns Eatery was like my favorite breakfast place that we went. It was the one that was literally a block from our place, and it was just
Yes.
this really chill. It had outdoor seating, and it got to 70 degrees while we were there.
Mhm.
But that may be
Perfect. No
Courtney's least
humidity.
favorite because she wasn't feeling great when we
Wasn't-
went there.
Yeah, I will say, yeah,
But we
Pat
had,
O'Brien's did me in
Yeah.
again.
but
We
we
were-
had
I ate my hash browns.
you did.
Yes.
I
I'm
had
trying
vegan
to-
bacon.
What did
Mm.
I eat?
I'm trying to remember what you had that day. I feel like you might have had a
The
sandwich.
bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich
Yeah, you had a sandwich
on that giant white
They
sourdough bread.
I fucking don't remember.
No, that's
that.
what
know.
I had.
Is that what you had? Oh yeah, that's right, because you brought it home. I don't remember. I had vegan bacon and eggs,
I totally don't remember.
but I loved like the vibe of the place was so good. It was just so like cozy, and we got to sit outside, and then
and we were sitting like with a lot of the locals, like
yeah,
Everything in the Maroney was
and
more
that
local.
just
Yeah.
and we went to Frenchman Art and Books. That was another place we can shout
Oh,
out in the Art
yes.
Bazaar on Frenchman. And the last brunch we had was the French Toast on Decatur Street down
Mhm.
by the market, down
Mhm.
by the French market.
right.
And
That was
that
delicious.
was
Good.
stellar. And then our fancy birthday dinner for Patrice at the
Yeah.
Bourbon
Bourbon
House.
House.
I know. That
These
was
were
so
all
great.
So we had a full
Mm,
vacation weekend. We really shoved a lot in
Mhm.
there.
we really did.
Yeah, yeah.
And still, like, I feel like we didn't
Yeah.
press it.
We
too
rested
hard.
too.
We did
Mhm.
rest. Yes.
Yes, we saved time to watch a movie.
Yeah.
We did.
So, well, I have a story today that is based on our trip there. I was like, this is a cheat day because you guys have already heard some of this information when we were there. But,
All right. Well, hold on for just a second.
All right.
We'll be right back.
Do you want more Strange South every week? We can help. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can join our Facebook fan group, Fans of the Strange South Podcast, to keep the chat going with our whole creepy community. Do you have a story idea for us or a story of your own to share? Email us at stories@thestrangesouth.com. Plus, if you join our Patreon, you not only help support the podcast, you get an exclusive bonus episode for every show and a discount on merch. You can find links to all of these things on our website, thestrangesouth.com, along with photos, links, and show notes from every episode, Strange South t-shirts, mugs, and other goodies. See you there.
All right. So one of the only, like, we didn't do tour stuff really very much while we were there because we
No.
just really enjoyed doing the parades and being very chill. And
Looking at street art is so much.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, and the whole vibe of
Just
New Orleans.
People watching is the best thing to do.
Oh,
It's
in
the
New
absolutely.
Orleans.
best.
It's
Like,
just, you
seriously.
can just enjoy
We could just
walking
sit out on
around.
our stoop of that house and
Absolutely.
watch people walk by.
That's
we walked up and there were people with thongs and pasties like before we got out of the car. And I was
like,
like, all
"Woot,
right,
woot."
this is going to be something.
I know, we saw we didn't. You said you'd already seen boobs like by 10 minutes in.
Right, 10 minutes in, it's like I already saw like half naked person and boobs. I had to text my son. I said,
And
hey,
something else. You said, I've had something and a.
and boobs.
and boobs. Yeah, I told him, I was like, we're already here and I already have seen something and boobs. And my son was just like, wow.
No, I think he said nice, and then he
Oh.
was like, for the other thing, not
Oh,
the
yeah,
boobs.
yeah.
I can't remember what the other thing
I forgot
was.
what that. I don't look it up.
Weirdly, the two special stops that we really did were cemetery stops.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So on our way, and some of you
shit,
may
I
have
forgot
seen
about that.
this. Yeah, some of you may have seen this because we shared some of it online. But we stopped in Mississippi to see the grave of the Gypsy Queen
Right.
that Patrice has
Kelly
talked
Mitchell.
about, Kelly Mitchell on the show. It was really cool. It's just this little like regular cemetery, just kind of shoved in the middle of the city.
Right.
And wait, we were in what city were we in?
Meridian, Mississippi.
And oh yeah, we had a good meal there too.
Mhm.
Anyway, so but we saw the Gypsy Queen's grave, and there were still Fanta bottles on the grave, and candles, and like all kinds of little offerings and everything on the grave. So that was really awesome to see, and we took some pictures to share. But the other thing we wanted to see was St. Louis Cemetery #1, which is
Mhm.
the cemetery that people want to see
Right.
predominantly, I guess, when they're in New Orleans, because this is the big name cemetery. I didn't know a lot about it. I mean, I knew, okay, well, this is where Marie Laveau is buried.
That's all I knew about it.
And I knew that this is where Nicolas Cage's weird tomb
Pyramid.
is.
Yeah.
Yes. These are the only two things I really knew about this cemetery.
I've been once before.
And Courtney already had some, she'd already experienced it. And so some stuff has changed since you were there
big
too.
time. We'll have to share the picture. I
We
shared with you
will.
all what it looked like before.
Absolutely. So, like, I was kind of fascinated with this above ground burial idea because the first time I had been to New Orleans, which I kind of completely forgotten about until we got there, was for a trade show when I was very young. My second major job out of college, and my boss and I were in a cab driving down from the airport to the convention center, I guess. But we were wherever we were going, we were passing by one of the cemeteries and you can see from where we were driving, like all the vaults rising up over the walls of the cemetery. And Steve was telling me, the reason they do this is because the water table is so high that, if you bury people in the ground, they just pop back out. And so that's the only thing I knew about like vault cemetery.
Me too.
We went to see this again, Marie Laveau, Nicolas Cage, like the big name cemetery. And we had to get a tour guide. We had to buy our tickets in advance and get a tour guide because this is controversial in the city, but the archdiocese, it's a Catholic cemetery,
Right.
and the local archdiocese has taken over all tours. They no longer allow tours from outside tour groups to go in. You can't just wander into the cemetery, which you could at
Like
one
I
point.
did.
Mm-hmm.
We pay. You still had to go to that little visitor center and
Mhm.
pay, but they just let you walk around and do whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
And stay as long as you wanted.
They don't
It
do
didn't
that
matter.
anymore.
And
No,
I
it's
feel like
totally different.
There was a time where they stopped letting people do that and said only tours, I feel like. And then they said only tours through the archdiocese.
I think that they said also that they stopped letting anyone in except family members.
There was like
family.
at least 2 years
Yeah.
where they didn't do any tours at all.
Right.
And then the archdiocese started having their own tour guides come in and do, or whoever they contracted, their tour guides come in and do the tours. So there's really only one way that you can get in. So we had found all that out in advance, and we had booked our tickets while we were sitting here in Pod Basement to
Yep,
go.
like we gotta
Right.
go.
So you walk in to this cemetery, and it's like one of the first things I noticed was this like kind of bizarre, there's no sense of order inside. Like when you walk in, if you're not following a guide, I don't know that I would have known where to go, like, because there's no pathway that you can really, I mean, there's a bunch of kind of gravel walking paths and things like that, but there's no clear flow of traffic around this area. It's not like you see in a lot of cemeteries where things are in rows. There's these, 4-foot tall mausoleums, and then there's these graves on the ground that are just slightly raised up. And then, I mean, just all types of different things in all types of different orders. And there's just no rhyme or reason to it.
Right.
But it's really cool. Everything is a different style. It's like walking into a labyrinth. And some of them, it looked like I even felt like some of the ones that our guide was taking us to, you kind of had to like wriggle between things to get to the next.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting.
Yeah. There was no like really standing around them. It's like you kind of stood down the row and,
Mhm.
you know, tried to hear what he was saying.
Yeah, because there was no open space
Mm-mm.
where a tour group could stand to really listen
Yeah, I
together.
think they did like 15 to 20 people. There weren't that many of us,
No,
but we
and
couldn't.
there weren't very many
Yeah.
of us.
Right.
No. So they call these above ground cemeteries in New Orleans the cities of the dead, and that's part of the reason they say that these are like the crypt condos, these almost like miniature houses that they build to put people in. Some of them, some of them are just pristine, just beautiful white marble with these massive like Roman inspired
Mhm.
angels on the top, and some of them are just like bricked in little
Mhm.
boxes with plaster
everything's
and things
white.
growed through. Yes, and everything is kind of covered with white plaster. It's the oldest extant cemetery in New Orleans, so it's like people are still being buried there. It's still active. And so I find out when we walk in that my boss's story is not the only story of why
Nope.
they build people
Oof.
above ground. So one of the first things that the tour guide, and our tour guide was Charles. This was through the Archdiocese, and I'll put the link on the website. But it was funny because as we were walking to the tour, he told us that he has a messenger bag with him, and he's got a patch on it, and it says from Chehaw State Park, and he's a Pinhoti trail hiker.
Right.
So he's like from our neck of the woods, and we were able to talk to him and everything. But he was very sweet and knowledgeable. He was
great.
Well,
he
he's
was
from
great.
there, but he has been here.
Yes.
Right.
He wasn't from here.
No, he wasn't
Yeah.
from here. No, but
he knew where we
he
were
knows
from
this
when-
area.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so,
He was
he
like,
was
"Oh,
he was
yeah."
super corny, but he was awesome. I really, really liked him.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember stuff that he said, which is
Oh.
kind of a big deal for me when
Yeah,
I go on
same
tours.
thing.
I
Well,
remember
he was a history major.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
he had a lot of good, corny jokes, but lots of good information.
Lots of good information.
I liked it.
So one of the first things he does when we walk in is stop at the wall. You walk in, you kind of turn left, and there's the wall that kind of surrounds the entire cemetery, and
Mhm.
stop at the wall. And you look at it, and the wall is made of vaults. They're called wall vaults or oven vaults. And the openings on them are only a little larger than, of course, the height and width of a casket, because caskets go in these holes in the wall. New Orleans was founded by the French in 1718. Patrice, you've talked about this before. I think when you talked about the convent,
right.
the Ursuline convent. So in 1725 was the first public cemetery built, and it was on St. Peter Street, and it was an in-ground cemetery. They buried people there, and they did have problems with the water table. They had problems with burying people in ground. But then in 1788, the yellow fever epidemic came, which you've also talked about.
Right.
But, I don't know if it was specifically New Orleans, but it was all over
It
the
was
South.
all the South and the coastal areas because, that's where they sent prisoners and
Mhm.
people they didn't want to deal with from Europe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you
Send
have
him to
like,
the colony. and-
Yeah.
yeah, and good
like-
luck.
So this was like a
America's-
massive public health emergency because people were dying in such great numbers and so quickly that there was no way to even bury people at all. It didn't have to necessarily do with in-ground burial. It had to do with the fact that there were towers of people on the side of the road that
Right.
just had died and couldn't be buried that fast.
Right.
There's dead people everywhere. There's all this humidity and wetness, and God,
Disease.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just
disease,
imagine?
exactly,
Yeah.
because
Surprised we came back without a disease.
I know, right?
It's like I thought at least one of us was going to have COVID or the flu or something.
I
You know what I
know,
mean?
Lord.
Hey, we've been 2 weeks now. We're good with that.
I think we're good.
We
I
didn't
think we're
bring that
good.
back from New Orleans.
No, we did not. So all this yellow fever epidemic, and there's this terrible stench in the city, and they're trying to get people buried, but they can't, and they decide that they're going to open St. Louis Cemetery. At the time was a suburban area, kind of outside of the city. And they still did in ground at first. And part of it was because of a reaction to this yellow fever epidemic. It's like, we're obviously at capacity. We need to add more places. But, too, it's, when you're burying people and they end up being kind of shallowly buried, and there's so many people and it's so quickly done, that public health emergency doesn't get sorted out because if somebody sticks a stick in the wrong place, they're releasing infection into the air.
Blech.
You know, I mean, like
Gross.
for real. I'm sorry, but
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
like, that's legit.
No, I know it
If
is.
The local dogs and cats don't dig them up.
I
No
know.
shit.
God,
Yes.
put those rocks on top.
So the plan for San Luis Cemetery came around this time, and like I said, they were still doing in ground at the very first, and it did get moved, and the boundaries of it got changed at one point. And if you want all the history of that, there are a billion places you can find it. I'm not going to get into that, but one thing I always forget is that the Spanish had New
Spanish.
Orleans.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They
From-
went back and forth.
Yeah, so the French had it until 1763, and then the Spanish had it from 63 to 1803. The French got it back for like a millisecond and then sold it to the U.S.
Yes, for the
It was 1789 when San Luis was established, the cemetery number 1. And Esteban Miro was the governor of New Orleans, and he had Spanish allegiance. And so he was like, well, Spain has these above ground vaults. Spain has these walls of vaults, and this design seems like a good solution for this space. So it was the influence of European, Spanish architects that kind of led to this wall vault idea. It had already been designed and tested other places. So they began doing above ground tombs in New Orleans. And some of them, like we've said, are these big vaults, these crypts with these
Mhm.
statues. And, you know, it's very showy. You know, they're like marble freestanding 4 or 5 feet high, and they're expensive. And I looked and looked to try and find how much they cost for people at the time. I found a photo of a sign at San Luis Cemetery. 1, 2, and 3 was charging like, and this was not for your plot. This was for the services of a sexton to come out and remove
Yes.
or place a body in a crypt. And that was like $6 or $7 for babies, you know, $8 or $9 for adults. So, you
In
know,
what year?
I couldn't,
Oh.
it's this picture in this book
Oh.
called Gumbo Yaya, which I bought at
Gumbo Yaya!
at the Frenchman bookstore, and it doesn't have a date on it. So I'm not sure, you know, black and white, sometime in black and white time. Now it costs $40,000
I
to
was
get a
gonna say.
plot in San Luis Cemetery.
To get a plot. Does that even count the sexton?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
And, you know, our guide also talked about like, so if you'll pay more if you pay for care in perpetuity, which means the church forever is to take care of your tomb, your plot. If you pay for the plot and then the family comes in and takes care of the tomb afterwards, I think the price would be lower and different. But if you pay for the church to care for it, you've got to pay this up front. And Courtney was like, I think it was you the whole time, was like, how much did it cost? How much did it cost to pay in perpetuity?
Well, I was just thinking too, like, those old families got it good, like
No
inflation.
shit.
I had
know.
paid $6 to the church in 1885, and they're still taking care of it.
Exactly,
And
right?
you know, it's costing them more than that.
I know. So, you know, so these are, of course, these big vaults are unaffordable for many, many, many people. Cremation was banned in the Catholic Church until 1963, which I don't know that our guide said.
No,
Because
No.
one of the
Nope.
things that I thought of was like, well, what?
Why
I
didn't you
mean, they'll
just
just
cremate?
be
Yeah.
cremated and it's cheaper. But if you're Catholic, you couldn't be cremated until the 60s of 19. So they had to have other options. So these wall vaults, or these oven vaults is what they were called. And this was weirdly like, I was so
This is
fucking
the best
fascinated
Oh
part
by
my
of the
this
whole
part.
God.
tour.
I had no idea.
It was like
I
the
had no idea.
opening of the tour, and it was like the most invested I was in everything.
Mhm.
These wall vaults, like I said, they're, you know, the ones that we were looking at, he was pointing out this eye level vault that's, you know, what was it? Probably like, you know, 1 foot by 2 feet, 2 feet by 2 feet.
Yeah,
If
just
that-
like the idea of what you would think a crematorium would look like too. Where you just slide the casket
very
in.
small. It's
it
the
was
size
high,
of a casket.
But that wall was
The
high.
wall is high, and
like
they
8
were
feet.
lined. You know,
Yeah.
they were piled up. You know, there were several openings, one above each other.
But the top one was taller than me. I would
Yes,
say.
yes.
Mhm.
So these tended to be. I mean, it sounded like they still could be individual tombs, but they tended to be family tombs. So it's group burial, which I just never realized this. So how these tombs work: someone dies. There is a procession to the cemetery. There's a hearse or a carriage that brings the coffin there. There's a sexton that comes. He's the guy you pay $6 for. He comes and he has already removed this. You know, you look at these and there's usually like an engraved marble tablet or something like that on the front that says the family name, and there's this showy, you know, nice. And so he's taken that off, and behind it, there's a brick wall with masonry. And so, you know, he's removed the masonry and he's put a curtain up there so that people can't look in
Right.
to the hole. He's already dealt with all that shit. So they get the coffin to the cemetery. They they finish the funeral, they lift the coffin up, and they slide it into this hole.
But it's not any coffin. It's not like the coffins that we think about nowadays.
It's just wood.
Probably
He
not.
said it was
It's
just
just
wood.
a
It was
wood
just
box.
it was a wood
Yeah.
box.
Uh-huh.
Nothing fancy.
Because it's meant to.
Still
I mean,
is
it's
just a wood
going
box.
to decay.
Right.
Like the goal is for it to decay.
Mhm.
Correct.
So put that in, and brick back over it. Put
Mhm.
all it and put the tablet back on. And then you have a waiting period of a year and a day, which is a ceremonial waiting period for like a 1 year mourning period. And then it's disrespectful to remove someone on the day of their burial. So you wait another day. And after that period is over, you've had an entire year of subtropical seasons.
New Orleans,
pass.
weather.
Yeah. So
Which, if you've ever been to New Orleans in
Mhm.
August, ooh,
I mean, there are days
Just
when
like-
you feel like you're decaying as you
Here.
walk.
exactly.
You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
Alabama,
like
too.
you can smell decay everywhere you walk in some
and
places.
half of it's you.
And so it's
Yep.
so it's doing its job in this case.
Yes.
So this is built for exactly this type of environment. So it goes through 4 seasons of decomposition. And in that time, it's inside this, bricked in,
Oven.
structure, and
Mhm.
it turns into a crematory.
Yep.
It
Which blew my
hastens. I
fucking
know.
mind
I was
when he
like,
said
that can't be
that.
right.
I was
But
like,
it basically slowly cremates the body so that in the course of a year, and it doesn't always work the way that,
Yeah.
way that it's intended. But generally, in the course of a year, you're left with bones
bones just,
in a casket. That year and a day passes, and the sexton comes back. I guess they keep like a spreadsheet.
Yeah, they do their.
That's what I don't know
Put
why
the
I thought
reminder
about
on their
that.
phone.
They put the Google
Ding.
like
It's been a year and a
"Ding, it's
day."
time to get Mr. Smith. So and the way our guide said it, he's like, the sexton comes, he removes the tablet, he takes out 3 bricks to let
Oh,
all
God,
the critters
no.
crawl out.
He
oh
said
my God, when he
roaches.
said that.
He said roaches, and my head just went.
Yeah.
Oh,
'Cause,
yeah,
you
that was
know,
the worst part of it
in
all.
New Orleans, I don't think I've ever seen a cockroach, thank God. But I know living in a river town like Columbus, Mississippi, we would
Mm.
call them like Johnny cockroaches because they'd be like huge.
Mm,
They'd be the river
Palmetto
cockroaches
bugs.
mhm.
that would fly.
Yeah, the
Ugh.
Florida
So
ones
big.
are pretty terrifying. So yeah, so he would take a couple bricks out, he'd let it sit, and then he'd remove the rest of the bricks. And this really blew my mind because you kind of think of like, okay, you put things in a tomb and they stay there. That's how things work. No, you remove the coffin, you dump, or if it's a certain type, you dump the remains out of the coffin, you destroy the coffin, and underneath the chamber where the coffin was, there's what's called a caveau, or a receiving chamber, or a receiving vault. And they take the remains and they put them in that receiving vault. And there are some that are built like with this ingenious little gap in the back where all you have to do
they
is
just, like-
turn the coffin upside down,
And they
empty
brush
it, and take a brush and push it in, and it falls all through the grate into the receiving chamber, and you're in there with the rest of your family for all eternity, and they're ready for the next guy.
that just like the whole process just
Nathan.
like blew my mind.
Me too. I was just like, holy shit. So then they re-brick it. They place the tablet back until the family needs another. And then, Courtney, what happens if somebody dies else in the family within that year and a day?
You have to rent out a space
Yeah,
for
You gotta
somebody
rent your
else.
own oven.
Because I feel like the light bulb, everybody's listening, then I think everybody had the same question at the same time. Everybody's looking. He goes, I know what you're thinking. What if somebody is so inconsiderate that they decide to die before that year and a day is over and they're supposed to be in the same tomb? What are you going to do? And he's like, they would just rent some from the next family or
Mhm.
from the cemetery. Rent
Mhm.
out a space.
That's like the most functional wall
No shit.
ever.
And that's what's really funny is because I remember that first time I went and I was looking at all this and I was like, I understand the purpose of this, but it just seems so wasteful.
Yeah.
Right.
There's so much space taken up by these big monuments.
Mhm.
And because
And,
you think
like,
there's one
you
person,
think there's one
or like
person.
4 people, like
Oh,
if it's
wow.
a family.
But in reality, this is extremely efficient. So this St. Louis Cathedral Cemetery number 1, St. Louis Cemetery number 1 is a single city block in New Orleans.
Just one block.
One
Mhm.
block. There's more than 700 tombs inside, but there are tens of thousands
I like
of
he was like
people interred
He
there.
said they've
50,000.
He said
estimated.
50,000.
Yeah.
And other people have said 100,000, but I think those people are full of shit because it's mostly like ghost tour
Oh,
websites.
yeah.
But I mean, it probably is over 50,000 people.
Oh yeah.
And
Since what year was it established? 1780?
1789.
Uh-huh.
So, really, it's just this massive, like,
One
it's
block.
very efficient.
Yeah.
And so there are other group tombs too. If you can't go in there with your family, there are these big tombs for social societies. And one of them was the New Orleans Musician Society tomb. The one that he pointed out to us was the Italian Mutual Benevolent Society. These
which
are
was
these
this
big things.
huge.
I mean,
Yes.
and that was one of the ones that was really stand out. I think it's the tallest one in the cemetery.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of featured in that movie.
It's that's right, Easy
Easy
Rider.
Rider.
It was featured in
Because there's
Easy
like
Rider.
a full, like human-sized statue on the top
Mhm.
of it they sit on.
And
Sit in
there
her
are several
lap. Yeah,
others in
yeah.
little alcoves
Yeah.
around the outside of it.
It's kind of
Because
a
it's
dome
more
shape.
like
It's
a
like
dome.
round.
Yeah, it's not like
Mhm.
the other ones where it's a little house. It's like it's a big monument, but there's more than there's room for up to 1,000 people in it.
Mhm.
Because then the entire society goes in together and pays for this tomb, and then anyone who's a member of that society has dues, I'm sure, and goes in and they can then benefit from that. So everybody shares the cost of it, which makes it affordable
Mhm.
to be buried there. And it's like the other ones where you basically get
So
cremated
smart.
and dropped down, and then the next guy comes.
So
So-
smart.
So, we're wandering through this labyrinth and kind of marveling at all this stuff because they're all so different. There's no lack of things to look at. Like, they're all so
Beautiful.
different. And even just like the
Creepy.
patterns of the plaster breaking off
And
of
the
things.
little
Ferns
ferns.
in the
Tiny
wall.
ferns
I have some
growing in
great
every
pictures of those.
crevice. They're
Yeah.
beautiful. But so we're wandering through here, and suddenly, like, we go towards the back of the cemetery. We reach this weird open grassy spot. It's like this little grassy alleyway in the back.
Very open.
And it doesn't look super manicured. It's not the way that like our, Protestant graveyards generally look.
Right.
And we find out this is the Protestant section of the Catholic cemetery. And
The back alley.
and it looked now, and I won't say most because I think I was just fixated on these ones, but like as we walked out, there were a bunch of in-ground graves still.
Mhm.
He said when they would have to dig them for people, they would have grave diggers come in and they'd dig and they dig and they dig and they'd get like a foot down and the grave would be filled with water.
Mm.
And they dig and they dig and they dig and they'd be in their waders trying to dig more out of this, and they'd have a second group of people come in to bail while these people dig because like there's so much water in the ground.
Yes.
And
It seemed like
then-
a fool's errand.
It really
actually.
did. It absolutely did. And then they would put the coffin in and basically stand on it, and they would bring this large I don't know what it's called.
Slab?
It was a slab that they would place
Yeah, it
on
was
top
just
of it,
a
and then everybody would
a graveside.
stand on it and basically
Push
jump
it down.
to get it to like stay down.
It's like, why
And-
couldn't they just like look at the rest of the cemetery that was doing just fine? But no, they had to be different.
I
Well,
know,
you know the
right?
Protestant and Catholic divide. How
I
deep
know.
it goes.
They-
yeah.
We're not doing
You
what
could
the
totally-
We are going to
it was
go
so
in
funny.
ground
I know.
like a true Christian.
I know. So because it was such a
Jesus
line of
saith, "Thou
demarcation.
shall be buried under the earth."
Yes. So, and what's interesting too, and I had to look this up, was in Hurricane Katrina, even now, this isn't the case with this one, but even a lot of mausoleums like this, above ground tombs weren't safe because in areas like Baton
Mhm.
Rouge, it was such a
Mhm.
powerful storm that it
Mhm.
tore the doors
Mhm.
off of these crypts and drew
Mhm.
people out anyways. But in San Luis, it submerged everything, but nothing
Mhm.
was destroyed.
Mhm.
So the other thing that we noticed and that he pointed out as well is, from Marie Laveau's tomb on, like Patrice said, everything is plastered over in white. And you see these X's everywhere. There's these, in different materials. Some of them are red and some of them are just like look like they're etched in with a knife. And so you see these X's everywhere. And I didn't say anything really about Marie Laveau's tomb, but it was one of the first stops we made, and you wouldn't have known it was hers.
No,
Which is not what I expected
no.
at all.
I was kind of shocked.
I was. And I looked at it and I was like, I honestly had a moment where like, is he lying?
No.
Because if you look at the engraving on the plate at the entrance to the crypt which is kind of at eye level, it's in French, but it's for the widow Paris, the family
Mhm.
Glapion. And this is her husband and her common law husband. And so but Laveau only appears once on that engraving. So it's like, if you can't read French, you wouldn't know at all. And it's just like the others. It's how tall do you think it was?
I have a picture right now of him standing. It was taller than him because
Yeah, I was gonna say it was taller than a lot of the other ones.
he's standing here in front of it. I mean, it's probably 8 feet
8
tall.
feet, yeah.
Mhm.
And it's got 3 openings on it because it
Mhm.
is a family tomb. But if you didn't see the little bronze plaque, and it's a
Yeah,
small
small plaque
paper,
on the
left. The
probably an
bottom.
8 by 11 small bronze plaque on the left bottom side, you wouldn't know that it was Marie Laveau's tomb
Oh yeah.
because it doesn't stand out. But you would see these X's on it, and
Mhm.
there were more of them on it than on some of the others. He told us the story of one of the reasons why they closed the cemetery was because of vandalism.
Mhm.
People had come in and painted over specifically her tomb with pink latex paint, and they were afraid that they would never be able to restore it. But they did, but they had to whitewash the entire thing in
Right.
I don't know, maybe more ways than one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's pretty whitewashed.
So
There's no flavor there.
and Courtney can probably say
Mhm.
what it looked like before because you went
I
to
have a
it.
picture of it right here.
Well, it looked
It
more
was
like
colorful,
pink
right?
and purple. There are
Mhm.
flowers, beads,
yeah.
shells.
It looked more like Kelly Mitchell's
Incense,
grave.
yeah.
Yeah, offerings.
Offerings.
Mhm.
And he said that like the little alleyway between her crypt and the next one sometimes would be filled to the brim all the
Mhm.
way up 6 feet up, filled with flowers and offerings and things like that from people who had come. But he talked about these X's that you would see on the walls, and he said the reason why they're there is because there was this kind of legend that there were certain things that you could do at her tomb and at other people's tombs in order to gain favor from the spirits inside. And the first thing was to knock on it. And which
Right.
is funny because we both did this a little while ago, is to knock,
Knock
because we
on
always
it.
say
Knock
knock
on
on wood,
wood.
right? And
Mhm.
so in this case, it's to let the spirit inside to know you're there so you don't
And
like
that's
freak it
where the
out.
saying knock on wood comes from, is to awaken the spirit.
It is, but it comes from like a European tradition that's even older than like cemeteries like this, I guess, where they believe that all the spirits lived in trees, and so they would touch wood or knock on wood to get favor from the spirits in the trees. And then that transferred into, tombs and graves and things like that. And so the myth went that you would knock to wake the spirit and to kind of get it ready to like transfer favor to you. And then you would break a piece of brick off of another tomb and draw 3 X's. And then you would make your wish and leave an offering. Now, this is the story that people tell about Marie Laveau's tomb specifically because she was the purported voodoo queen of New Orleans.
Right.
And the offerings would be like anything people
Mhm.
like Courtney said, and you said, people would leave food just like the Gypsy Queen. They'd leave bottles of things, they'd leave jewelry, they'd leave things that are important to them or things that they knew the person liked. So since the rumor was that Marie Laveau is a hairdresser, they would leave like hairpins and things like that. So the X's, even now when nobody is allowed to like kind of bring things in, they're still drawn all over the cemetery. And some say that you would put those X's in, you would scream your wish, you would rub the tomb with your foot, you would leave some coins in a silver bowl. There are a bunch of different stories about how you would get your wish from her tomb.
Mm-hmm.
But our guide Charles said all of this is bullshit.
Right.
That it's not based on voodoo. It's
No.
based on visitors and urban legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he did tell the story, and you guys may have to correct me on this, but in my brain, this is what I remember, that there's a tomb further back in the cemetery called the Periwinkle Tomb. And he told a story of a man who maybe was not raised Catholic and had gone to this tomb to mourn his wife and had been told that in order to do whatever he needed to do or get whatever he needed to get from this, he needed to go to her tomb and make the sign of the cross 3 times.
It was,
And
yeah.
Oh, that's what it was.
and so
Yes.
he went and grabbed what he could, which was a brick from another tomb, and didn't understand what the sign of the cross means, spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch, and took the brick and made 3 X's on the
X's.
tomb because those were his 3 signs of the cross. And if I don't know if I remember that. In my head, he's drunk. I may have just made a new legend.
I don't know. I don't
Well, it's New Orleans.
But
Probably.
that was where he was like, this whole thing comes from a bit of foolishness,
Right.
and it's not
Mhm.
actually
Somebody that doesn't have good handwriting.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
yes.
and did the crosses sideways so that now that they're X's.
Yeah. So, of course, the other people, like we said, it's Marie Laveau. Nicolas Cage paid, 40 grand to get his
God.
pyramid in this cemetery. Homer Plessy of Plessy versus Ferguson, Supreme
Mhm.
Court ruling.
Yep.
is there, and there were a bunch of other people too. But it was just like, it was one of the most interesting things.
Absolutely.
And it got me down the road of Marie Laveau, which is funny. I don't know, have you talked much about her on the show?
I talked a
Yeah,
little
we
bit
did well
about-
with La La Ree.
Yeah,
with Lala Ree.
Yeah, right.
I talked about her when I did Little Violet.
Mhm.
And but I don't know that either of us has really delved much into lore of Marie Laveau, so that may be in the future.
Right.
And I found some other stuff too that came from this that we might be talking about cemeteries for a while
Yay.
yet.
Oh my God, it's so interesting. And I tell you what, y'all, perfect weather. Like it was so miserable in Alabama, like the day before that we left. I mean, it was just cold and misty and just gross weather. And it had been that way all week. And the day that we toured the cemetery, it was low humidity,
Oh,
which
it's
I've
beautiful.
never experienced in New Orleans ever. The bluest sky that I've ever seen. Like,
it was so pretty.
so pretty, just perfect weather. And it really, this whole experience was just magical. It was really great.
Yeah.
Loved it.
So yeah, that's the fascinating kind of semi-history of the San Luis Cemetery. Number 1, if you ever
Yeah.
want to go, ask for Charles. He's a nice dude.
Yes.
Absolutely. That was great. Thank
Well,
you.
thanks.
Loved
And
it.
if you want to hear more about our trip and the gaudier details, hang in for the after talk. You can join us on Patreon for the very low price of $3
I
a
was
month.
thinking.
That's all right.
There are some videos, not of what we did, but of what others were doing that they're not never going to make
There's a
socials.
video that Patrice told me never to share.
I think it's just bad singing, though.
Well, thanks y'all for listening.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Yours is on top. Yours is on bottom.
It's just a difference.
See?
Yeah.
You can there should be a little nut on it. If you like it on
You
top,
just-
you got to squeeze the nut.
Like it on top. It was upside down and backwards.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
adventurous.
It's trying too hard.
Oh God.